I never thought I'd meet someone who could change my life so suddenly. My name is Jason, and I always considered myself a pretty grounded guy. Work, sports, Netflix, nothing too romantic. But one Friday night, everything changed. It was just a regular post-work evening. I decided to go to a small cafe near my office to grab a coffee and escape the city noise. And there she was, Emily. I didn't even notice her walk in at first, but something about her smile stopped me in my tracks. She sat at the next table and pulled out a book I had been wanting to read for ages. Without thinking, I leaned over and said, "You're reading The Night Circus. That's one of my favorite books." Her eyes lit up instantly. "Really? I just started, and I'm already in love with the world inside," she said. And that's when I knew this wasn't just a random encounter. We started talking so easily, like we'd known each other for years. It turned out we both loved quirky coffee shops, long walks around the city, and classic movies that no one else watches. We laughed, shared stories about work, friends, childhood. There was this feeling that we were meant to find each other that day. For the first time in a long time, I felt someone was truly listening to me, and I was listening to her with the same intensity. When she laughed, it felt like that laugh was just for me. By the end of the evening, we exchanged numbers, and I knew this wasn't just another contact in my phone. It was the start of something bigger. The next morning I woke up and realized she was the person I had been searching for all these years. Emily became my other half, and from that moment on, I never doubted it. Sometimes fate decides to intervene when you least expect it.
My name is Sarah, and I've always been skeptical about love at first sight. But one random encounter completely changed my mind. I decided to go to a party my friends were pushing me to attend. I usually avoid such events, but that night I agreed. There were a lot of people, noise, music, laughter. I stood in the corner with a glass of wine, trying not to get lost in the crowd when he approached. His name was Mark. He didn't look particularly striking, nothing that would immediately catch your eye, but he came up and said, "Hi, I can't help but notice you're reading the same book I started this week." I looked up and saw the book in his hands, the exact same one I was reading. We started talking about the plot, the authors, the characters, and then something incredible happened. The feeling that I had finally met someone who understood me without words. We laughed, exchanged witty remarks, and for the first time I realized I could just be myself without fear of judgment. My friends said I was glowing when he was around, and I agreed. At some point, he just took my hand and asked, "Want to go for a walk?" I said yes, and we stepped out into the night city, where the streetlights and silence made our little world feel incredibly special. That night, I realized I had found my other half. Not because of appearance, not because of words, but because of that feeling that you can be yourself and still be accepted. Mark became the one who makes my life brighter, calmer, and certain, and I knew I want to go through everything with him.
My name is Ben, and I've always been a bit of an introvert. I was drawn to people who saw the world differently, quiet ones with deep thoughts. I never expected to meet someone who would push me out of my comfort zone so suddenly. It happened at a tech conference. I went alone, as usual, to listen to the speakers and avoid unnecessary conversations. But then I saw her, Laura. She was standing by the coffee stand, studying the conference program, and looked so focused that I even stopped to watch her. At one point, our eyes met, and I decided to approach. "Are you also interested in AI?" I asked, trying to look casual. She smiled. "Yes, but I'm more curious about how it can be applied to art. What about you?" And then we dove into a conversation that lasted for hours. We talked about everything, from music to programming, from books to movies. Every thought she shared resonated with me. For the first time, I felt like I was speaking with someone who thought on my wavelength. When the conference ended, we decided to take a walk in a nearby park. That's where we first felt true closeness, no artificial topics, no pressure, just two people genuinely interested in each other. I realized I had found my other half the moment we just sat on a bench, exchanging thoughts, and the world around us disappeared. Laura became the person I want to share all joys and hardships with. And that's when I understood. Sometimes the deepest connections happen where you least expect them.
My name is Liam, and I've always considered myself pretty independent. Romantic relationships were never a priority: work, sports, friends. But one day I realized that sometimes fate has its own plans. It happened on an evening run in the park. I often run alone, listening to music and trying to clear my head after work. That night, I noticed someone stumble and fall along my route. I stopped to help and saw her. "Haley, thanks, I totally misjudged this turn," she said, laughing and blushing a little. We started talking, and I was surprised at how easy it was. No awkwardness, no pretense. It turned out she also liked evening runs, but rarely did them because she worked long hours. We started meeting by chance during runs, and each encounter became special. She shared her dreams, fears, funny work stories, and I shared my life. It felt like we understood each other without words. One evening, after an especially long run, she just took my hand and said, "I never thought a random turn in the park would change my life." And that's when I realized I had found my other half. It wasn't a lightning strike love at first sight, but it was something much deeper. The feeling that the person next to you makes the world brighter and life simpler and happier. Haley became my compass and inspiration at the same time, and I know I never want to lose that feeling.
My name is Oliver, and I always thought relationships were complicated. I saw friends go through breakups, arguments, jealousy, and thought it wasn't for me. I always valued work, sports, and small adventures with friends. Love seemed like some chaotic and unpredictable emotional storm I wanted to avoid. But one evening, I realized that life can change drastically in a single moment. It happened at a concert of my favorite band. I went alone because none of my friends liked this music. I was standing in the crowd, trying to find a spot with a good view of the stage. And then I noticed her, Grace. She was standing nearby, singing along to every song so genuinely that her energy seemed to pull me in. I hadn't planned to approach her, but something about her smile made me take the first step. "You're a fan of this band too?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She smiled, and her eyes sparkled with genuine excitement. "Yes, I've been listening to them since my teenage years. What about you?" And that's how our conversation started, lasting the entire concert. We discussed every song, shared our impressions, laughed at weird fan memes, only we seemed to understand. After the concert, we decided to grab coffee together at a small CAF nearby. Grace turned out to be not just funny and smart, but a deep person. She noticed details in the world I usually missed, the way sunlight hit a wall, subtle changes in people's moods around us. Each meeting became part of our little story. We went to concerts, took spontaneous trips around the city, shared music, books, funny videos we found online. I felt like I could be completely myself with her, and she accepted it without judgment. One evening, we were sitting on her rooftop, looking at the city lights and laughing at silly things that seemed meaningless. And suddenly, I felt it, the full realization that this person was my other half. Not because of random looks or words, but because of that deep connection you feel in every glance, every touch, every laugh. I realized I wanted to go through everything with her, the joys and the challenges. Grace became my light, my inspiration, and my support all at once. And from that moment on, I knew I would never let her go.
My name is Nate, and I've always considered myself a very practical person. I planned everything: my career, finances, even weekends. Romance always seemed unpredictable and not particularly important. But one rainy evening, I realized that love can appear where you least expect it. I walked into a small bookstore cafe to escape the rain. I just wanted to sit, drink some hot chocolate, and read a few chapters of my favorite book. And there she was, Claire. She was sitting by the window, wrapped in a warm sweater, writing in her notebook. Something about her focused expression immediately caught my attention. Maybe it was the way she held her pen, or the way she leaned over the pages. There was something that made me watch her, even though I tried to act naturally. I couldn't just walk past. I sat at the next table and, as often happens, made the first move with a simple question: "What are you writing?" She looked up, slightly surprised but smiling. "Just thoughts. Sometimes I write short stories." "What are you reading?" And that's how our conversation started. At first, we exchanged small talk, then moved on to deeper topics: favorite books, movies, childhood. It felt like I had known her for years, even though we had met just minutes ago. We discussed small things that seem unimportant: the smell of coffee, the sound of rain outside, how streetlight reflections shimmered on the wet pavement. Claire laughed at my attempts to joke, and in that moment, I realized her laughter was the purest sound I'd ever heard. We shared stories about trips, small adventures no one else notices, and every word felt significant. When the cafe was about to close, she looked up and asked, "Want to take a walk?" We stepped outside, and the city felt magical. The wet pavement reflected the lights. The air smelled of rain, and everything seemed quiet. Even though there were still people, cars, city sounds. We walked side by side, spoke little, but every touch, every glance made everything clear. There was an invisible connection between us that defied explanation. We continued seeing each other. Every conversation became deeper, and I started noticing how much her presence changed me. I became more attentive, more open to the world, while she laughed at my practical life calculations and helped me relax. One evening, we sat on her rooftop, looking at the city lights and laughing at random silly things that seemed meaningless. I looked at her and felt something I had only read about in books before: endless gratitude, peace, and a sense of home beside someone. At that moment, I realized, this is the person I want to be with forever, not because of looks or random attraction, but because of that deep, quiet, incredible connection I felt in every glance, every laugh, every touch. Claire became my other half, and I know that even if life throws challenges at us, together we can get through anything.
My name is Ashley, and I've always been someone who believes in little signs from fate. I wasn't actively searching for love, because I believed it would come when the time was right, but I never thought one random evening could change everything. It happened on a train, returning home after a long, exhausting day at work. I took my seat by the window and turned on music, trying to disconnect from everything. And then he sat next to me. His name was Ryan. At first glance, nothing extraordinary, but there was something in his eyes that made me feel a nervous excitement I had never felt before. He noticed I was reading a book he had just finished. "You're reading The Alchemist?" he asked, and that immediately broke the ice between us. We started talking about the plot, how the book changes your perspective on life, how every day can be a little adventure. I felt like I could be honest and open, and he did the same. The next half hour flew by like minutes. We shared small details: what we like to eat, the movies we watch, funny things that happen at work. It was incredibly easy. No tension, no expectations, just genuine conversation. When the train pulled into my station, I realized I didn't want to say goodbye. Ryan felt it too. He asked, "Want to grab coffee after work on Saturday?" I agreed without hesitation. We continued meeting, and with each conversation, I understood more and more that I had found my other half. He changed the way I look at the world. I began noticing little details, appreciating small moments, and believing that true love exists. One evening, we were sitting on a bench in the park, holding hands, and I realized the feeling of him being there is more than just infatuation. It's a feeling of home, safety, and happiness all at once. Ryan became my compass in the world, and I know I want to go through everything with him.
My name is Jacob, and I've always considered myself someone who lives by a schedule. My routine was stable: work, workouts, meeting friends. Love always seemed unpredictable, and I didn't expect to find it in the most unexpected place. It happened in the university library. I usually went there alone, seeking peace and quiet among the bookshelves. That day, I was trying to find a rare psychology book when my hand accidentally touched someone else's, who was reaching for the same book. I looked up and saw her. "Emily." "Oh, sorry," she said with a slight smile. I replied, "No problem. Looks like we're both after the same thing." That was the start of our conversation. We discussed books, authors, favorite quotes. It turned out we shared very similar views on life. Funny little details that make everyday moments special. We began running into each other in the library by chance, discussing new book arrivals, sharing coffee during breaks, laughing at funny campus situations. Each day, I noticed how drawn I was to her, how I wanted to spend more time nearby. Emily made me realize that true closeness doesn't always come from romantic gestures. It grows in small details, in genuine looks, in moments when you can truly be yourself. One day, we were sitting on the library rooftop, looking at the city, and I suddenly felt it, the deep realization that Emily had become my other half. I didn't expect it, and it happened so naturally that even I, Jacob, who always planned everything, understood true love can arrive at any moment. From that day, We started spending more time together outside the library, supporting each other in studies, dreams, and even little challenges. I know I wanted to go through everything with her, because the feeling of having someone beside you who understands and accepts you is priceless.
My name is Lexi, and I've always considered myself independent. I love traveling, working, and living life to the fullest, without thinking much about relationships. But one evening, I realized that true love can appear in the most unexpected moment. It happened during a volunteer event at an animal shelter. I went there to help with the animals, expecting nothing special. And there he was, Caden. He was also volunteering, immediately helping the kittens who could barely stand on their tiny legs. His caring approach toward the animals was so genuine that I couldn't take my eyes off him. We started talking, first about the animals, then about favorite books, music, and travel. It turned out that we shared many values: helping others, appreciating small things, finding joy in simple moments. With every passing minute, I felt an invisible connection forming between us. We continued meeting at different events, and over time, our relationship grew into something deeper. Caden not only impressed me with his care and attention, he made me laugh, brought out the best in me, and made me feel safe. One evening, we were sitting by the river, watching the sunset, and I realized that my heart belonged to him. It wasn't an instant crush, but a gradual realization that this person had become my other half. I felt calm, joyful, and inspired all at once, knowing that I wanted to share everything with him, both happy moments and challenges. Caden became my friend, my support, and my inspiration all at the same time. And I realized that true love is when you can be yourself and feel fully accepted.
My name is Michael, and I've always considered myself a skeptic when it comes to love. I had seen too many disappointments in the lives of friends and family, so I kept myself away from relationships. But one evening, I realized that true love can change you inside in seconds. It happened at a street food festival. I went alone to try new dishes and relax a bit after a long week. And there she was, Sophia. She was standing by a small stall, laughing at the vendor's jokes. And her laughter was so genuine and contagious that I couldn't walk past. I approached and asked, "What are you trying? Maybe you can recommend something tasty?" She smiled and replied, "Try these tacos, they're amazing." "What did you get?" That's how our conversation began. We talked about everything: food, travel, favorite shows, little silly things that make life fun. Every minute felt easy and natural. We laughed, shared stories about the past, about strange adventures we'd experienced. I felt I could be myself, without fear of judgment. Every smile of hers made me happier, every glance spoke louder than words. We spent more time together, dining at small cafés, taking evening walks in the city, sometimes just sitting on a park bench watching the world. One evening, standing on a bridge, looking at the river, reflecting the lights, I realized something incredible. Sophia was my other half. It wasn't just infatuation or a crush, but a deep understanding that I wanted to go through everything with her. Joy and laughter, struggles and fears. I never thought love could appear so unexpectedly, in an ordinary place, on a normal evening. But Sophia proved to me that sometimes life gives you the most valuable thing when you least expect it. She became my support, my inspiration, and my home all at once, and I know I want to spend my whole life with her.